Today, we'll talk about how to make money by using smart money trading concepts for sniper scalping in the 1-minute time frame. I'll cover my recent trades and show you how the same thing keep happening day after day. I'll show you the mistakes that I made during this time and how you should avoid them. Then I'll show you how I manage trades like a pro trader, so you can too. We have so much to cover. If you're ready, let's start. Welcome our free trading course, all about price action trading strategies and smart money concepts. Today we'll talk about sniper smart money trades. If you are looking for a structured table of contents, I set it up for you. You can find it on Google Drive or directly from my website, which is in the description. Okay, let's see what we have here. Starting from daily, we will go deeper and deeper. You can notice this daily order block right at this point. And notice these extremely powerful bearish candlesticks. Candles like this always create imbalances. Combinations of order blocks and imbalances are the best reaction points. Switching to the 1-hour chart, keeping our daily levels. Notice exactly the same thing between 1 day and 1-hour charts. I call these order blocks super order blocks. If you have watched my order block video, you can see these with all same time frames. Let's also draw our movement to determine premium and discount zones. So, if I want to price go from discount to premium zone to above order blocks and imbalances, where do you think is the best possible reaction point? Where do you think the price can move from? Right from this point. Another super order block. Super order blocks are very simple. Order block plus extremely powerful candlestick plus a large imbalance. This is a great example. All great. Now focusing on 15-minute time frame. In my opinion, the most critical time frame for all day traders. First of all, remember to watch your New York opening session at 9:30 a.m. You can also notice the very clear market structure break. So, what should I do here? I'm looking for reasons for the price to move to the premium zone above. I also noticed this tiny imbalance below. So, what do I have here? I have two significant inducement areas, but which one I will use it as a reaction point. If I draw my Fibonacci from this movement, this area is my optimal trade entry zone. This is a perfect place to look for entry as a layer system where the multiple structures collide. However, if I use a larger OTE, then the area below will become my entry area. This is also a great area. There are no fixed rules when you use the Fibonacci. Fibonacci is an extremely subjective tool. Now, I have two possible reaction zones. Which one will work? What do you think? Personally, I have no idea. Actually, I do not need an idea. Remember, trading is not about knowing or being right. Trading is all about managing your account and taking calculated risks. So the answer is, if the first one fails, I will use the deeper one again. 2 trades, 2 chances, 2 possible outcomes. I do not care about being right. As for the target, we have a clear target above, the forming liquidity and imbalances. Let's switch to the 1-minute chart and look for entries. I noticed this swing failure pattern. But why this one is important? Because it is fully filling the imbalance and tapping the 1-hour super order block. Right after that, the price makes a structure shift at this point. It also creates this imbalance if you look closely. It taps the imbalance a little tap. However, I have a cushioned stop loss entry. Being extremely precise is not my job. Some of you can work on it. But I'm a really busy person and I do not have much time for it. You can see how this trade worked. However, I made a small profit from this trade. I took partial profits on this trade from liquidity points, and the price moved back into my entry. Because this was an FOMC day, interest rate decision day, I ended the trade because of unknown volatility. Remember, winning trades, losing trades, being right, being wrong, none of them matters to me. Making money, locking profits, and growing my account slowly is the only thing that matters. Let's check another trade. If you are a beginner, I suggest you delete everything from your chart every morning and redraw everything until your mind and hands get used to it. You already remember the order block and the imbalance from the previous trade. Now you can see that our daily OB and imbalance are fully filled. Also adding other drawings back into my chart from the previous trade. Price is now in the premium zone. Tapping the super order block. Adding optimal trade entry into my premium and discount range. You can see the price in the perfect position to look for shorts. It also collides with a very obvious breaker block zone. When I saw all these, I decided to look for a quick short. Now switching to the 15-minute chart, everything is absolutely clear. Price in the optimal entry zone and the breaker block area. Notice the swing failure pattern. It also hunts equal highs, which is also an inducement. What you see is actually quite a simple structure, the power of 3. The accumulation phase becomes right below the breaker block. Hence the liquidity as the manipulation, then the expansion phase will come soon. What about targets? Do I have a target here? Notice the liquidity forming below, right above this large imbalance, and the support resistance Phillips zone. A very nice and a very clear target. Finally, the 1-minute entry chart. You can see the power of 3 much more clear in this chart. The accumulation, the manipulation, and the final expansion. This was actually a pre-market trade right before the New York opening. The problem with this trade was it did not have a very clear structure shift and entry point. This is where the experience comes in. I saw this happening thousands of times, so I do not even need to wait for confirmation. Nothing can replace true experience. Still, you can see the market structure break right at this point and this great imbalance. Notice how this little spike clears all the internal liquidity and taps the imbalance. Again, I saw this mini structure so many times. This was a very clear entry. I know that all of these feel very complex to you. It is natural. Remember, you cannot play an instrument in a month. It requires months of practice or even years. Trading is no different. With time and patience, you can be a profitable trader. May not be a rich one, but consistent and profitable. Okay folks, ending this great lecture, learn about risk management and how to trade in any condition. Probably next week we will look into more trading examples. I hope you subscribe to the channel and like the video. Thank you, please take care and see you soon.